Thank you for tuning into the little bonus video that was inspired by the Petite Knit Seaside set. It is a paid for pattern on Ravelry, but I will show how to do the needleless jog-less stripe on here. My name is Evelyn. I am the Modern Needle on Facebook if you care to have a look. As promised, we will talk about stripes. How do you knit stripes without a jog? How do we get a jog? The question should be, why do we get a jog? The how is we do it all by ourselves. But this is the best way that I can explain this. When we knit in concentric circles. So one stitch always sits higher than your last stitch, and this is where the jog occurs because rows are concentric. They have a beginning and they have an end, and they're on the same line, but we're not knitting in the same line. We're knitting in concentric circles. In crochet, you can make the decision, are you going to crochet in concentric circles or are you going to have open and closed rows? That is up to you. You get to decide. In knitting, you actually can't. You will always knit concentric unless you knit back and forth. You will have rows that want to be open and closed and they stop on the same line, but because we're knitting this way, you will always have a jog. So how do we minimize the jog, or how do we stop this? When I was making the little seaside set, just as a reminder, this is a paid for pattern on Ravelry, and I was asked by my local yarn shop to knit this. As you can see, it has stripes, and I knitted a sweater for the yarn shop before, and I really was not, I was never really very happy with how the stripes are knit. And many tutorials, what they have you do, or what you can do, is at the end of the row, you lift, instead of knitting this first stitch here, you just lift it onto your new needle, therefore pulling it up and making it bigger and minimizing the jog that way. But when you look at the sides, then that means that my stripe here is 5 rows of blue and 3 rows of gold. So if I lift this guy here and I don't knit him, this guy for example, I will only have 4 rows here. And then in the next one, instead of having 3 rows, I will have 2 rows. Does it matter? If you can make that look clean, then go ahead, and no, then it doesn't matter. For me, I always had an issue with it making it clean. You can knit helix stripes, which are concentrical spiral stripes, but they only work if you have 1 row stripes. They might work with 2. I'm not proficient in helix knitting, so I'm not 100% sure. But I was never very happy with the jog. So here is the other thing that you need to watch out for. When you have stripes like this, what do? Do you want to pull the yarn from the gold? Am I going to carry it up for my next gold stripe and then carry up the blue? Or do I cut it and weave it in every single time, knowing that 90% of the time you will add bulk to this fabric here and you will disturb the flow of the fabric somewhat. Now, if you do cut it and you restart it, one of the things that you can even out is, because you're cleaning up the threads, you can actually pull these stitches in any direction that you want, therefore making them bigger or lifting them up or whatever you think to help minimize the jog. However, as I was knitting this, I was also test knitting for a shawl, and in the second podcast video, I will show you how I will show you the shawl, but the pattern was elongated stitches, and the way that she had written out the elongated stitches gave me an idea on how to consistently carry up the yarn without making it pucker or pulling it together. So the challenge, if you don't want to trim the yarn, is that you carry it up, and consistently you need to have the same amount of threads over the same amount of rows, so that when you turn it inside out or right side out, you're actually not pulling the fabric, hindering the fabric, minimizing the elasticity, but you're also not so loose that you end up having holes. So the idea that the shawl gave me, I made 2 of the tops of the sweater, and the first one I kind of did that way. Sorry, the second one I kind of did that way. The first one I didn't. The first one I just pulled it up, and I kind of had my finger in here trying to add consistently the same amount of yarn up, but it actually gets a little bit cumbersome to have your finger in there as you're knitting, trying to pull up the yarn so that this here does not pucker. But the shawl used elongated stitches, and I thought, oh, that is a great way to bring up the yarn and consistently have the same thing. So I'm going to show you how they did it. So the first thing that we need to do is, I'm at number 4 here, and this addresses another issue that I get asked about a lot actually. Do you count the stitches on the needle, yes or no? To me, I say yes, and the reason why I say yes is I have 4 stitches below my needle here, sorry, 4 rows of stitches below, and I have my row of stitches up here. This is number 5. If I don't count this and I knit 1 more row of blue, I'll have 6 rows, but I only need 5. So stripes, I think, really show you what you need to count and what not. And in your cast on, if you have a long tail cast on, your first row is actually already your knitted row, so you should purl back, because the first row of your cast on is a knit row. So in the long tail cast on, it's counted 100%. So here we go. I need to cross my colors. I'm going to continue with the gold and drop the blue. So I'm just crossing them, and I'm going to pick it up. And the reason why I want to do that is when I do this and I cross them, it lifts this gold, and that's actually what I want. I have to bring up some thread in the back, and to consistently do that, what I figured out for these 5 rows, I wrap the yarn around my needle 3 times and bring it through. This is my first stitch. If I take it off, sorry, I'll go back in here. I wrap the yarn around my needle without going through. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I have this much yarn. This is how much yarn that is. However, part of this will be eaten by my first stitch. So this is kind of what I need, and I will show you. Okay, let me get back in here. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Well, now I want to do it fast, and it will not work the way that I think. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. It's only the first stitch. Anyways, this is how it looks, and we just continue knitting. We will have to knit 3 rows of gold, but I want to get to the other end. and then show you how that works. I will speed this up for you as you don't actually need me to watch. So now we're back around at round 1. I will leave this dropped. I don't need to cross it at this point. I'm going into the first stitch that has my wraps on it, and I just knit it as a normal knit, and I let all of these stitches here fall off. Not stitches, sorry, wraps, and I just keep on going quite like normal. Again, I will speed this up for you. I'm back at the beginning. I have 1, 2, 3 rows of gold. My next color again is blue. So again, I drop my gold and I will pick up the blue so that they cross. You can see the cross quite easy. And I will do the same thing again. I'll wrap it twice for, did I get to? Yeah. I will wrap it twice for the gold because that's only 3 rows. And in my mind, that worked just fine. 2 wraps, 1, 2. Sorry, to do it on camera, of course, is, there we go. There's my second wrap, and I just keep on knitting. And the needles that I'm using are my Knit Pro Zing. I will link them on the bottom. They are from Amazon. I like them because these are 3.75 needles, and all of the 3.75 needles are all the same. Whether I have a 6-inch, an 8-inch, or an interchangeable, or a long a cord that is not interchangeable. And the crochet hooks are also the same color. Now this here is a 5.5, this is a 3.75. I was looking for my purple hook, of course. It's in one of my whips at the moment. But all of their colors are always the same. So even if I don't remember what number I'm looking for the purple needle, and they are quite smooth. The joins are very smooth, and I love DPNs, so they're very good. I also have the little straight needles that are only 8 inches or 10 inches, whatever they are. And again, I will link them below. So let's have a look at the stripe here. I think that the jog is quite good. It is minimized. Now, one of the things that you can do when you're finished, before you block it, just pull on your pull on these threads a little bit to cinch up that first and last stitch, and to lift them up. And you can see just me doing that already straighten out some of this here. This is not blocked just yet. These ones here, I didn't even straighten out the inside thread. So you can see how this works quite well. Now, what about if you use a thicker yarn or a thinner yarn? Would you wrap it however many times? The answer is yes. So for me, the 5 going up 5 rows, the 3 times wrapping worked out well with my gauge, with my needles. If I have a thicker yarn, my needle is thicker as well. So as long as I'm going up 5 rows, I think the 3 wraps will be perfect. If I go up the 3 rows, the 2 wraps work fine. No matter how thin or how thick my yarn is, because my needle is adjusted to go with it. The other thing that I did want to point out is that the yarn that I'm using for this sample here is from Nitka. It is 100% superwash. They're out of Mississauga, Ontario. She has a website. They're quite lovely. The yarn is very nice and squishy. They are 50-gram balls, as they are European balls, and most European balls are 50 grams. And they're a size 4, even though I personally think it's a very light number 4. I wasn't really sure that I was thinking number 4. They use a 4 millimeter to knit with, and this is a 3.75. Not really sure I would go up to the 4, but the yarn is quite lovely and it is reasonable. So you can go and have a look at their site there. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think about my nearly seamless jog, how you would use it, if there is any other suggestions that you have, or any thoughts on it. If the video was at all helpful to you, hit the like and the subscribe. And until we meet each other again, my name is Evelyn from the Modern Needle on Facebook. Stay safe and stay crafty.